Today is June 10th, 2022. I'm with Brandon Mcdonald. So Brandon, who are you?
That's a long question, I guess.
No, the simple one, just your name and how do you spell it?
My name's Brandon Mcdonald, Brandon Mcdonald, like McDonald, but without all the money. I'm a real estate investor here in Nashville. Been doing real estate stuff since 2006. That's kind of the way I make money, and love doing real estate, but my passion is probably more like hunting and archery stuff. So that's like me kind of broken down probably into
And
a
you're the
quick
third
nut.
person in the last 2 days I've seen with that hat.
Yeah.
Ah,
That's because my boys wear my hat.
your partners were wearing your hat.
Yeah, so it's a nonprofit that I started. Well, sort of nonprofit. Basically, Mere Mortal Archery is the name of the organization, and what we do is I'll like have companies send me gear, I review the gear, and then we give it to vets and other folks that have had kind of traumatic experiences, first responders and stuff like that, to try to kind of start a healing process by getting them into something that creates the need for discipline and then the ability to look ahead and think about the future. So booking a hunt in the future then requires that you create preparation for yourself, and it also gives you hope because you're looking at what you perceive as the light at the end of the tunnel of, I'm going to get to go on a hunt in a year, so I need to stick around and I need to be able to do something. I need to be able to focus in and so that I can get to that light at the end of the tunnel.
Tell me about your family.
I'm married to a wonderful woman named Jocelyn, and she's a horse person, just like Kim is.
Well, I'm about to say your horses are sitting
Yep.
right up the hill.
Horses are a couple hundred yards away. So a huge part of our life has kind of revolved around a farm, essentially. Living away from the city. We live on 25 acres now, and we're moving to a different facility on 35 acres to kind of better facilitate the horses. And that truly is, like, Jocelyn at her core is a horse person. That's like the thing that she eats and breathes.
It's Kim.
Yeah. Yeah.
Period.
Yeah,
Kim is horse person / animal person.
Yeah, and everything that I've talked to, every time I've talked to Kim, there's so many parallels between the two of them. It's really interesting to see. So Jocelyn is that's my wife. We don't have kids yet, and then I've got a sister, mom and dad. They're all down in Texas. Great relationship with them.
Whereabouts in Texas?
They're in outside of Dallas, Fort Worth, on the west side, and they were actually I grew up in Denver. So mom and dad, my sister got a job transfer maybe 2 years ago to move down to Texas, and the whole family packed up from Colorado and literally went down there, it's been interesting. That's been an interesting one. I don't think any of them like Texas as much as they were hoping, but you move away from like the foothills of the mountains of Denver, Colorado into just suburban Texas, and it's been an interesting.
It's a big change, and
Huge.
Plus it's Denver, and I know when. I spend a lot of my time going, during the summers, going up the east side of the Rockies, all the way up to usually up into Montana, and then swing back around and come down the west side. And we're having to give that up this year because Kim needs to be closer to her mom. But it's really hard for me to give that up because right now we would be somewhere in Colorado.
Yeah,
because it's June, and
Yep.
June we're in Colorado.
And June, you take those mountains straight up through Wyoming and go all the way up through Yellowstone and the Tetons and keep going. Like, that's one of the most epic trips ever.
Yep.
So that's what you guys do
Every year.
That's amazing.
Every year.
That's amazing.
When did you start investing in real estate?
2006, the perfect time. Everything was right at its peak, about to just crap. And I was like, you know what? This is great. Let's do this. Now, the story is it's slightly more interesting than that. I was a touring musician. I was a bass player. So my major in college was music business. And I was in between tours, and I'd been watching HGTV. And so there's a dude in San Antonio called Armando Montalongo. And he was just the shadiest dude, and I was like, if this shady dude who seems to have zero people skills can do this, so can I. and so basically what I did was I called a realtor friend and I called a mortgage broker friend, and I said, I want to flip a house. And literally the realtor was like, I have the perfect house. It just came across my desk. And I called my mortgage broker buddy, and because it was 2006, he said, send me your social security number. I'll fill out all the paperwork for you. All you have to do is sign. And no income, no job, loan. Like, it was ridiculous. And I ended up making more on that first flip than I had the previous year doing music. the timing just worked out. Like, honestly, it was a good deal when she actually brought it to me. It was a solid deal that worked, and it was a paint and carpet rehab, which was exactly what I needed. So I kind of went from there, where it was doing one rehab at a time, flipping to eat. I didn't want rentals because I didn't want the headaches. I didn't want tenants and toilets. And then it turned into doing more than one deal at a time. And then in 2009, after everything had kind of crashed or started to descend, I ended up at a poker game on Thursday nights with Jason Dodge and Brandon Rumbley, who we've been business partners ever since 2009. We literally split everything, a third. And I'm our construction guy. Brandon Rumbley is the realtor. He's kind of acquisitions, dispossessions, and then Dodge is kind of the behind the scenes CFO type fella. And we've transitioned from just doing rehabs into building new construction, selling houses for income, but then keeping as much as we could. We bought a fair amount of rentals, single family, duplexes, triplexes, quadplexes through the downturn. And we're really fortunate to just happen to live in Nashville, because coming out of the downturn, Nashville just exploded. And so, we were really lucky to ride the wave up on Nashville from 2010 on.
What made the market in Nashville so hot? I mean, it's hot everywhere. I mean, you can go to Daresville, Georgia, for Pete's sake, and it's hot in Daresville, Georgia. So it's not just here.
Yeah.
But what really was what were some of the things that made Nashville so incredibly hot?
I think that it was a combination of low interest rates, which makes everywhere hot. So there was a lot more mobility. People perceive mobility. Nashville was always a really affordable market, relatively, like on a national scale. If you looked at the other major metropolitan areas, Nashville just looked super appealing. So companies started moving here because they were like, Tennessee's a no income tax state. Our property taxes are low. Like, we're always ranked in the top 5 as far as the most friendly non-tax states. So I think it was a combination of then the cool factor of Music City. So people come and visit, they go down to Broadway, they go do the Opry like you guys are doing, and there's this special thing that Nashville has that you get to experience, and then you want to move here. The weather is probably decent. It gets hot in the summer, but we don't have like super cold in the summer. So there's a lot of people from up north that don't want to move all the way to Florida. I think we just kind of had this perfect little combination of all those things adding up to a lot of new jobs moving into this area. And we added an incredible amount of people over the last 10 years. There's supposed to be 200,000 more people moving to the Nashville metropolitan area in the next 5 years. Incredible. So there's cranes and buildings that have been in place for literally a decade, building as fast as they can. Hotels, apartments, condos, you name it. We've been doing as much as we can on the infill side as far as new construction stuff, going in, tearing houses down and building new ones. And we just can't keep up with housing demand. So that's another thing that has basically just careened those house prices upward. The demand for housing in Nashville has gotten so strong. I mean, our prices have risen. Like, houses that we were buying in the downturn for $30,000 in the same condition are now $300,000. Now, 30 grand was a good deal, but some of the stuff that you're paying $300K for now, I'm just like, how in the heck? It seems insane.
But when you look, when it's 5 or 7 years from now, and that same stuff is $600,000. If that is the big if.
I don't know how. The only thing is, like, macro wise, we have to see an increase in people's wages. There has to be, or there has to be some new product that they're putting in place, because even 40-year mortgages don't really knock housing prices down that much. Like, and we're seeing these crazy, weird macroeconomic things with, the CPI just came out again today, and it's 8.6%. So it kind of dipped down a little bit, but it's come back up.
When I came out of college, the inflation is where it is right now. So I think that's funny that you got to go all the way back to the early 80s.
Yeah. Well, and they keep saying, like, inflation's the highest it's been since the early 80s. But
it's early 80s. It's 40 years ago.
But inflation in the 80s is almost insurmountable for us, because it was like 17% at one point. So we're really in one of the highest inflation markets that we've been in for like a century almost. Okay, maybe not a whole century, but we're in these weird kind of I don't know. It's a little unprecedented what I feel like we're about to go through. It's going to be interesting.
And in the end, we don't know what we're going to go through.
No.
We can only kind of figure it out.
Yeah.
So you told us when you got started in real estate investing, but why? Why did you do that first house? So you're doing music, but why did you do real estate? Why did you? I mean, what made? Because you could have done different things.
Yeah.
What was it about real estate that made you say, okay?
Yeah, the perception of freedom was exactly what I was hoping for. So that was the reason I wanted to do music too. To me, getting up on getting to write music and play music and the connection that you felt with people, to me kind of felt like freedom. Like that felt like I could do what I wanted to do if I could make this happen. And then once I started actually getting to live that dream and going and doing those things, I realized like there's just a lot of sitting on a bus with the same group of people that I'm okay with these people. And then going into a concrete green room at a place and sitting there and eating the same crappy food, and it wasn't freedom. So when I switched over to real estate, the reason I did it was because I perceived that I could do things in my time, which was like in the beginning, I mean, get up super early, get to the job site, manage the thing how I wanted to, stay super late. Like it was, I could drive the ship, and I was in charge. I was in charge of my destiny when it came to real estate.
Why was that important to you?
Because I felt like I could create time. I felt like I could create money, and I feel like I could create a lifestyle that I wanted by leveraging real estate to get all those things.
Did your mom and dad play a part in you becoming a real estate investor?
100%. Yeah.
How so?
My dad's an entrepreneur. He was a CPA his entire career. And I watched my dad working in an industry that demanded during tax season that he was there 70 to 80 hours a week. Like, and I'm not exaggerating. He would get up before I went to school, and then he would be back, like, come kiss me goodnight when I was already in bed, all growing up. Awesome dad, fantastic dad, but he was always gone. And so I said, I never want to do that. I don't want to do that. I want to be able to be involved in the day-to-day. I want to be able to come on a Friday afternoon and sit down with my buddy Bill and have a conversation like this. So
when you say that they were a big influence on you, it's not because your dad did real estate. It was just the opposite. You were watching going, I don't want to be that.
Correct. So now they also, because of my dad's willingness and self-sacrifice, his willingness and understanding of like, he created this great business that threw off a lot of income, but he traded a lot of time for it. But what he did was he was super smart with his money, and that's allowed me to at times be able to borrow money from them to do deals, and he taught me about money, about the way money works. We were never afraid of money. Money was never a forbidden topic growing up. You know, what is money? It was a tool. And they explained what money was. And then my mom, you know, she's got her master's degree in speech pathology, super intelligent lady, and just the combination of they gave me this like intestinal fortitude that I could go out and I could do whatever I wanted to do.
How'd they do that?
I don't know. I think they just kind of let me be myself when I was growing up.
Did they gear you towards something like, son, you're going to take over my CPA business one day?
No, he never did that.
Because when you did music, that is so far different from what he was doing.
100%. But my sister...
did he look at you and go, son, you're making just the worst mistake in the whole world?
No, he didn't. He told me to dream my dream until it wasn't my dream anymore. He said, dream the dream until it's not your dream anymore.
You know, I think that's so important because I see parents all the time. My parents were two of those that said, here's what you're going to go do. This is what's best for you. My dad would look at me and say, you know, you can quit Electrolux, but go ahead. Yeah. Be a ditch digger the rest of your life. You know, be a quitter.
Right.
And I worked for them for 18 years. And I was like, but I don't want to do this.
Yeah.
Be a quitter, son.
Yeah.
And that used to really upset me. But if a parent can go find out what, you know, look at the kid and say, find out what really turns you on and go do that. It probably is not going to be what you want them to do, but they're following a passion. And that's how if you live life following your passion, man, it makes a very interesting life.
But I also think that they perceived, and my dad said this, he said, you never got so far out of line. Like, I always did okay in high school. I did okay in my grades in college. I was a music business major in college with a vocal performance minor. And I was like, really, Dad? Like, you guys let me do that? And he said, you came to us at first and you wanted to do church music. You wanted to be a church music major. And he was like, and we knew that, like, if you could add the business side of stuff in there, so we did do a little steering when it came to that. Like, there's obviously nothing wrong with church music. It's just, why do you need to go to college to be a church musician, like to be a music minister or whatever. So they did do some slight, but Dad, later on in life, he was like, no, I always knew that you were driven and that you were passionate and that you were smart and that you were a risk taker, that you were willing to sacrifice and that you were willing to take risks that were calculated, in order to kind of further yourself. So, yeah, I don't know. My parents, I'm so lucky to have my parents. The older I get, the more I realize how many people have bad relationships with their parents. And I talk to my parents every day. So I'm super lucky to have them.
You mentioned your sister, but you didn't finish the thought.
My sister is an accountant. Just
Like
like
your
my
dad.
dad.
Yeah.
Yep. And so I'm a lot more like my mom. My dad's a little bit of an introvert. My sister's a little bit of an introvert. My mom's an extrovert. I'm an extrovert. So I think that, and my mom's a musician. That's where I got the music from. My sister works for Lockheed Martin, and it's funny because they've been like super savers their entire lives, like hyper savers, investing in the stock market. And now she's gotten to a point where they've accumulated enough money that I was like, why don't you retire? And she's like, I'm 40. I don't understand. And I'm like, why are you still working? Look at your investments and look at what you guys spend. Why would you not stop working? And she literally was like glitching on the phone. She was like, I don't understand what you're trying to tell me. I'm like, what are you working for? You're working to get freedom. And you have it right here, right now. It was really interesting. That I planted the seed. I'm going to keep bothering her about it. It was really interesting to just watch this, like, you're right. I could retire right now, but what would I do for this 50 hours a week that I give Lockheed Martin? It was really interesting.
It's funny. We had a conversation with a mutual friend of ours, David, and he had asked me to sit down and talk to him because he wanted to become an ender. And we were about halfway through our lunch, and I looked at him and said, you are an ender.
You are an ender.
No, I'm not. I said, yes, you are. He goes, no, I'm not an ender. I said, you've got all these properties. This is what they're producing in cash flow. This is what you're spending. You can quit. Because he had a job.
Yeah.
And he wanted to go buy a property in the Adirondacks.
Yeah.
Because that's where he grew up. And he didn't think he could go do it. And I think it was that summer he went and he rented a house and then spent 3 months there, not knowing before that he had already achieved financial freedom. He was an ender and had no clue. No one ever said, that's enough.
Exactly. But we've seen a lot of people like that over time, just in the we've seen a lot of people over time in the masterminds and at the actual events that it's because we've been doing this thing for so long. Oh, I show up 40 hours a week. I don't know what I would do. And humans are so afraid of change that it's wrenching people out of this rut. I'm over here doing this thing, and we have to wrench them out of that. But every single person who has ended up quitting their job, they've, like, a year later, are the happiest and the most content and the most full of joy and the most peaceful that I've ever seen. And I can think of 5 or 6 different examples, like right offhand. David, definitely.
Derek, Jeff.
Yep. Jeff.
So yeah, there's a line going here, and just watching kind of what they're doing when they had left their jobs, but it was such a monumental, oh my God, I'm making all this money, I can't leave this job. So that leads us back to you, and you talked kind of about your sister, about where she is, that she really is an ender and didn't know it. Where are you? You're not a starter. Are you a estate builder or are you an ender?
I think that with our structures, I'm still an estate builder. So I like doing real estate. I could reposition. Basically, like, I could get rid of some properties and then I could pay down a bunch of stuff and I could just be an ender. I could just be done. But we're keeping leverage on. And I say we because everything that I'm doing is with Brandon and Jason. So is always kind of the vernacular. I like doing real estate. Like, this to me isn't a job necessarily. I mean, there's some job elements of it, but I love showing up every day and getting to create stuff that families move into and, like, raise their kids inside of. I love that part of it. So I love houses. And so as far as the status goes, if I wanted to restructure stuff and just play all day long, then we could. But I don't. I we're balancing what I think the government is doing when it comes to like the inflation stuff. By keeping debt on, I feel like we're actually getting further ahead in the long run. And by ahead, what I mean is just more. More, because more gives you more options to do more stuff. Give more money away to people, lend more money to people who are getting started so that they can, create their own freedom. Give money to the church if that's what you want to do. So just more.
And you don't see what you're doing as work. You see this as something you really just love doing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, Davidson County has gotten worse over the last probably year. Like coming out of COVID, there was a bunch of restructuring, and it's become a lot more work than it was before. Like going, new construction. I'm a licensed general contractor. So all the BS that I have to deal with on the government side of everything has become much more difficult. But then we just pivot. Okay, the cheese got moved. So where are you going to go now because you're dissatisfied with the flavor of this cheese? Where am I going to go? I'm going to move to, we're going to start building in a different county if we want to build. We're going to avoid Davidson County because, we're just tired of dealing with all the, the increased fees, the increased timelines, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, you just go somewhere else.
Yeah, just pivoting.
Do you kind of mentioned your two partners, so you invest only with them, and talk about as far as what the relationship y'all have set up, and what role Jocelyn plays in that. When you're talking to her, is she more the horses?
Yeah.
Is she part of your business? Where Kim and I do this together.
Right.
So how does all that work?
No, Jocelyn isn't involved in the real estate side in the investment in our company, but she does have a real estate license, and that was a strategic move. Was Jocelyn's going to get a real estate license, and that way when we move, because we're moving south of town, fairly far away from where we are now. When that move happens, we're going to start looking for deals around here. Jocelyn knows, all the ins and outs of actually getting something under contract, getting it closed, and then I can either fix it up or we can tear it down and do new construction. So I think in the future we'll probably do some more business stuff together, but for right now, she's my wife, and that's a nice relationship to have. Like I'm a pretty aggressive person when it comes to managing people, and my wife does not enjoy that about me. And so I wouldn't want to hurt our marriage by going into a business relationship with my wife. And so trying to be sober about that understanding of like, we can be married, but should we do business together? And I want to tread lightly on that space,
What do your non-investor friends think of what you do?
It's changed over time. At first, everybody was extremely skeptical because obviously I think they perceive it as a big risk. And then after I started getting a few houses done, a few houses under the belt, like them coming and seeing, the quality of both rehabs and then new construction. And it's funny to think about like how many friends we've done major rehabs or porch additions or whatever on their houses. So over time, it's changed where it's gone from skepticism to appreciation for the skills that I've acquired, and then also just I think then like conversations about further real estate investing, because then they perceive it works. They're like, oh, this works because he did it and he's kind of a dumb guy. So if he did it and he's kind of a dumb guy, surely I, who am very smart, can do this.
You said they perceive real estate as a big risk. Is real estate a big risk?
If you do it wrong, it is. Yeah. If you do it wrong, it is. There's no doubt. If you like, give me an example or an example or two of doing it wrong. I like what Pete says about the type of
when you
people,
say Pete Fortunato.
I like the type what he says about dealing with people who are trustworthy and competent, and it can't be one or the other. It has to be both. And so what a lot of people end up doing is, because you truly do have to trust people, and you have to end up working with people as you're going along. Even if you're like, I'm going to do everything myself, you can't. Like you have a real estate agent, you have a title attorney, you have You have certain subcontractors that, like, if you need a licensed electrician to do some stuff, you don't have a choice. You don't have your electrician's license. So, I mean, we've seen people get hung up at every different stage during the process and have minor blow-ups that you can kind of work through. The major blow-ups that I've seen are people that basically start and then they just pedal to the metal because they're like, I got this. And they go from doing 1 rehab at a time to 2 rehabs at a time to 10 rehabs at a time to $20 million worth of, I got a mixed use building over here, I got an apartment thing over here, I got all this. And then what they didn't realize was that they went 10 or 15% over budget on every one. And instead of being able to just like pull out the credit card and say, crap, I'm going to run this thing up $5,000 to save myself on this rehab, they've gotten so far over their skis, the entire thing explodes. And so the risk of real estate is you can get caught at every single little independent point along the journey, but it's hubris that really does the big explosions. All the other ones are kind of you can work yourself out of. And having conversations with people that are like much more advanced can kind of dull the edge on a lot of the small things. But it's always interesting because the people who do the big explosions are the ones who are not talking to people, because they don't listen, they don't care, they know what they're doing, and then they blow it up. So doing real estate can be risky that way, but not doing real estate, especially if you don't have a good salary where you're able to save a significant amount of dollars in some sort of other asset, is more risky. Like, it just is, because you're going to be old. God willing, you get old. And then you end up like my grandparents on my mom's side, who he had a pension, and the pension was not enough. And my grandma's in an old folks home now, and her family is having to throw in to make sure that she can stay there and stay comfortable. Mm-hmm. And that sucks. And my grandpa didn't understand real estate. He didn't understand it to the point where he was lawn mowing when he was older in life, and because he just loved being outside. And he mowed this one guy's lawn, and when the guy died, he left him the house in his will.
Wow.
And my grandpa said, I don't want it because I don't want to pay the taxes. He didn't understand. Paid for house. Didn't understand. So he gave it back to the guy's kids, who ended up just selling it off. And had he kept that house, and had he put it with a management company and had it rented, Mama right now would not be in the position she's in. That one house.
How big of an area do you work?
On the building side and like our kind of primary business, I would say that we work a 30-mile range around Middle Tennessee. Now we have set up kind of a marketing company to bring in more deals, and we'll work the whole Southeast. But I would say primarily we're doing Greater Tennessee, South Kentucky, North Alabama, North Georgia, Chattanooga, that kind of thing. But
okay.
Our primary business is Middle Tennessee within 30 miles.
And what's the primary way you find your deals?
We have a young kid who's 25, who's as hungry and talented as a person as I've ever met, who is running, like you talk about the fishing pole versus the boats with the nets.
Yep.
He's running a huge boats with the nets organization. We've got VAs that are doing phone calls and texting and all sorts of different methods, but it's a huge amount of touches in order to try to secure deals, and then wholesaler networks and all that kind of stuff. Because we've got staff, like we've got to run, door knocking, one person at a time doesn't work.
Yeah. Again, it goes back to the fishing pole.
Yeah.
Some people, they're better with working with the nets.
Right.
How do you fund your deals primarily?
A combination of private money, hard money, and bank money, and cash. So depending on where we are, we'll leverage the network of, if we've got some time, it's always better to use bank money for us because the rates are so much cheaper. So if we've got time to close, we'll try to lock it up and then go with banks. And then if we have to close something quick and we don't have the money, we'll call some of our hard money lenders, and we'll borrow hard money at higher rates than we would like to pay. But it's either do that or don't get the deal.
And do you manage the rental properties yourself? or do you have a property management company?
We started a property management company when we got to a critical mass, and we hired staff to manage those properties and then to grow it and manage for other people.
When you started off, were you managing your own properties?
Yes.
And
it sucked.
You didn't like that at all?
No. That's the reason that that was the primary reason I partnered with Jason, because Jason had rentals and wanted more rentals, and I started to like see the value, and I was like, but I don't want to deal with this stuff because I have no patience for tenants, and I have no patience for just all the like, I don't care, you fix that yourself, you know, like that's, so I know that I'm not set up well for like just mentality wise for managing tenants. So Jason was, you know, kind of the property manager for a while until we accumulated enough that then we started.
So the lesson here is focus on the things you're really good at.
Yeah, and delegate the rest.
And get rid of and so in this company, you're really good at the building side.
I don't deal with the property management company almost at all. They'll call me in if they need me to show up for security, or if I need to go look at a really big problem. Like if there's a huge issue structurally or something like that, they'll bring me in, but it's super rare that I'm.
And you're very happy with that.
It's good for me, yes. Because I'm a detriment. Like when I try to get too involved, and even on the construction side in my team, if I try to get too involved with the minutia of what's going on, and you can ask like Matt and Michelle and Corey, the three folks that work under me, I just cause problems. That's all. I just cause problems. They're like, literally, please go away. Please, I'll do this part. You just answer the one question I ask. You don't have to show up. Just yeah.
So let's go back to the beginning. You're a brand new real estate investor. Let's talk about your first deal, second deal, something like that. And at that time, what was your skill level?
Zero. Me and I don't even think it was YouTube at that time. Maybe it was YouTube. I mean, zero skills. So on the first rehab, I did the majority of it myself, along with the drummer who was in the band from me because we were in between tours. And the drummer has gone on to literally for the last 15 years, he now runs one of the highest end house painting companies in Middle Tennessee. Like he does crazy expensive $7 a square foot, you know, like internal paint jobs on houses in Belmead, thanks to me. I feel bad. I feel a little bad. So zero skill level, but it was literally like I'd show up and I would look at the floor in the kitchen and I would say I should put tile in here because tile looks nice. And then I would get on the phone and I would look up how do you do tile and learn how to install tile, and then be willing to mess up and go in. And I can't tell you the first time I did tile myself, I can't tell you how many times I had to redo the grout because I didn't understand the concept of how the whole thing was working, because I think I was actually reading it online how to install tile at that point in time. It'd be so much easier now with YouTube. I was just willing to take the risk and knew that I could. I knew that I was going to solve the problem until it was done to an acceptable level. That was it. Like, don't stop doing what you're doing until it is done to an acceptable level. That's it. And I did that on every single thing. I needed new countertops. I'd never done that before. Okay, do this until it's into an acceptable point. And then the lady who on the first deal had driven through the back of the garage, which is why the house was cheap, there was brick that had literally just like pooched out on the back of the house, and it was pooched out like a couple feet. What I did was I went and bought a grinder, didn't own a grinder, I cut a straight line, knocked out all the brick, and then I redid that with siding instead of new brick, because all the brick masons wanted like $5,000 to repair it, and I fixed it for $200. So it was a combination of being a little creative and problem solving, and then again just being willing to make mistakes and then correct the mistakes as I was going along the line.
And you said you found that first deal FMLS, or?
Yeah, it was a realtor friend of mine who I called, and because I just knew she was a realtor, and I knew that was where you got deals from, right? We
all start there. Go see your realtor.
Yeah, exactly.
They'll help you.
Yeah, well, and honestly just got lucky because the thing hit MLS that the day that I basically got everything ready, finance wise. I just got lucky that it actually was a decent deal. It was a nice little paint and carpet rehab. It was all redid the interior hardwood floors with the little 3/8 inch laminate pergo. The only big major issue was that lady who'd driven through the brick. I swapped out some vanities for the cool old like vessel sinks that were really neat in 2010 10, but are like terribly inconvenient to use because it always looks like toothpaste all over the bottom of it. Yeah. I kind of get talking and I forget what the actual question was.
Well, we're going back to those first deals, and the last part of that is because we already know the answer now, because you didn't want to do this as rental. This was a flip for you. When you went into it, you were going to flip.
Yeah,
you wanted the cash.
Right, exactly. And I knew that I wanted to get to a certain level of income, and I knew that was what was important to me, was to hit an income. I always wanted to make $100,000 a year. $100,000 a year, and I perceived I was going to be rich. Like, I will make $100,000 and that's what I will do. And that was another reason that I stopped doing music, was I realized that in the lane I was in, it was actually going to be very difficult for me to make six figures doing that. And so the first year I did six figures in real estate, and that was when I started thinking, like, okay, how do you ramp this thing up now and start, what are you going to do with the extra money? Because now all you're doing is accumulating more money and paying taxes on it, and then having to stick that money somewhere to invest, because you're not just going to burn it all. Like, you're not going to just go live paycheck to paycheck making $200,000 a year. What are you doing with that extra 100? And I realized through, like, going to RIN and going to some of the education stuff, that one of the most tax advantaged ways to invest was, especially with the skill set, was buy a house, flip it, renovate it, make it nice, stick a renter in there, and all you're basically doing is taking all the money you would have made in a flip and just putting that soda bottle in the back of the machine. So, like, it's that, and you just accumulate this row of cold sodas in the fridge that when you want one, you open it up, crack the thing open, and then you've got this big line of nice rentals in a row, that when you want to burn one and you want to go on a real expensive hunt in Alaska, you can if you want to. Or you do what we've done for the last 10 years, which is just do some refinances and, then go buy more real estate with it.
Got it. On a scale of 1 to 10 on that first deal, how scared were you?
That's kind of dumb. I was pretty ignorant about the risk, so I would say that I was a 2. But it was because I was just dumb. Like, you
didn't know what you didn't know.
Exactly.
You didn't know to be scared.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I just had such confidence that it was going to work. Like, I just was not worried. Now, I will say my second deal, which was where we started hearing that, no, it wasn't my second deal. It was further along than that. When the market started to rumble and there started, being issues in the market, I did get. And
we're going to 2007, 2008.
Exactly.
When the real estate started
exactly
go the other way.
And Nashville, we didn't see a huge downturn, but we definitely saw like a softening as far as demand went. And so what I did was I just started saying, I'm going to shift and I'm going to start upgrading these houses to where I have the best house for sale in this neighborhood. So if somebody's buying a house there, they're buying mine. So fear was never, it's like I said, I'm not ever that afraid, and it's probably purely because of ignorance.
And what would you tell someone? Because there's some people that can invent things to be scared of.
Yeah, you just have to, bravery is acting in spite of the fear. It's not about not being afraid. It's about being afraid and doing it anyway. Now, a lot of people perceive that, oh, I'm afraid because I don't have as much information as I need. And the fear will subside once I get enough information. And that'll just hold you off of doing deals for so long. What you need to do if you're going to start out is don't go into a full gut to the stud rehab and learn unless you've got a crap ton of cash sitting on the side that you're willing to, like, I'm going to learn and I can go $200,000 over budget and that's okay. Go do a paint and carpet rehab with a relatively, it's not going to be a big juicy home run. It's going to be a single, but you're going to learn, and you're going to learn the little things that you make mistakes on, and it's a safer way to do things. And the reality is, getting a home inspection on the front end, if you don't know much about construction, getting a home inspection will tell you so much about this. It will tell you so much about a home that you didn't see. And if there are major issues, major structural stuff, whatever, with the mechanicals, a home inspection can save you from so much. And then you can just be afraid and do it anyway.
A piece of advice also on that, this goes back to the early days when I had to hire a home inspector because I didn't know what I didn't know. But I made sure he understood I'd be right there with him.
Yeah.
and I had, you know how many questions I can ask.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so
I'm sure they loved you.
but I paid them more,
Yeah, yeah.
and I took them to lunch and had a gift certificate to take he and his wife out. Said, "Here's the thing to Longhorns."
Yeah.
Because I told him this ahead of time. This is what I'm going to do for you, and when you hear how many questions I ask you, you're going to understand that you earned it.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Okay."
But you learned so much by going and
God,
doing
yeah.
that. Like I mean, think about the amount of information that you got from. You go on 5 home inspections on different levels of houses, and you will learn so much. It will blow your mind. Like, that's one of the things that I've always told people is go do a home inspection on your own house. Walk around in detail, open all the cabinets, look for drips.
Great idea.
Go in your crawl space. It's a really interesting experiment to just go see what do you notice. You know, and then you'll feel bad about yourself because you'll be like, oh my gosh, my house is a disaster.
As a starter, what were the biggest hurdles you had to overcome?
It always seemed like you either had money sitting or money available but no deals, or you had a deal with no money, or you had a deal that was closed and no contractors. So it never felt like you could, you know, move the pace forward and really get a rhythm. And the truth is, I still don't ever feel like we're at a wonderful pace of things. So I think for me, in as a real estate investor in general, it was dealing with the frustrations of never feel like I have my ducks in a row, but then still just doing it anyway.
Just keep charging.
Just keep going.
When you were starting off, could you envision where you are now, what you're doing now, the level of success you've achieved?
No. And that doesn't mean that I've achieved some astronomical level of success. I just had no idea that in 15 years I could accumulate the amount of knowledge that I have and have been in a career that I still deeply enjoy for this long, because I'm a person who I like to bounce around and I like to do something for 2 years. Like, my wife always jokes with me, like, you're off to find a new hobby, and then when I do a hobby, I'm like, I got into golf and I bought a golf cart and I bought $20,000 worth of clubs and we joined a $50,000, like, it's that kind of thing where when I get into it. But with real estate, I still just love it. Like, I love the people, I love being involved in it. Again, I love the houses and the idea of families being raised in the houses that I build and rehab.
When you were starting out, how many people told you would fail?
I didn't have anyone tell me directly to my face that I would fail. I had a lot of people that were like, oh yeah, let us know how that goes for you. Like a lot of snide comments, a lot of skepticism. So, but that just goes to that whole, like, be brave and do it anyway.
Yeah, because you just followed up with the next part of the question, which was, how do you deal with that?
Yeah.
Because you'll have a lot more people look at you and go, oh, that's great. And then behind your back, yeah, he's not going to make it.
Yeah, but you also have to understand my personality is such that on my archery YouTube page, when somebody makes a crappy comment on my page, I take a screenshot and I post it on my Instagram, because I think that it's kind of funny that someone would take their time to go troll someone when they're attempting to bring value to other people. So I also have that kind of sociopathic part of my personality, So there's a lot of people that are a lot more sensitive about it, but it still goes to the same thing. You have to make a choice to do it anyway. That's it.
Okay, so that was right into the next question, which is, so there's someone out there right now watching this video, and they're on the fence. Should I do this? Should I not do this? I'm really not sure what I want to do. And there's people around them saying, yeah, probably a bad idea. Yeah. And inside them, they're thinking, well, I think I can go do this, but there's also this big thing of doubt.
Yeah.
What would you tell them?
I would say, give yourself a timeline of 3 to 6 months to gain as much education as you can in the specific method that you are deciding to do. And you're going to decide, I am going to purchase a rental property, and you are going to ignore every other. It's not an Airbnb, it's not a flip, it's not any of those things. It is literally 100% a rental property. You are going to singularly focus on that thing, get as much education as you can, in a certain amount of time around that. You are then going to find the area that you're going to farm. You're going to research the comps. You're going to understand every street, every property in that area. And you are going to literally, like, let's say everything in there is selling for $150,000 and then one pops up for $100. Or you go door knock on those houses and somebody's willing to sell for $100. You have an understanding based on the accumulation of knowledge and focus that is a deal, and that is a thing that you can go get under contract. Get it under contract. That's the first step, because people think a contract is like a super commitment. No, what it is it's an ability to place something on hold so you can then make a further assessment. Call the home inspector. You have the home inspector confirm your assumptions. Confirm your assumptions. I'm assuming that the roof is okay because I looked at the roof and the roof looks okay. I'm confirming the HVAC looks okay because I looked at it and it doesn't look that old, and the house was cool when I was standing inside the person's living room talking to them, or when I had the realtor go do a showing. And as long as the inspector says everything looks good, then buy the house. And don't buy a gut to the stud rehab first. Buy something that if you find some downside, the consequences of a downside aren't that great, and then execute. So if it's a rental, you're going to keep it. You're going to put a renter in there, and then you're going to go cheers your husband or wife at dinner, and then you're going to do it again, and do it again, and do it again, and do it again. And before you know it, you will have accumulated more stuff than you can possibly imagine.
I love what you said about focus. I saw this done a long, long time ago. So let's say it's outside today and it's sunny and it's a warm day today. But the sun can give me a little bit of a tan, but that's all it's going to do. However, if you take a magnifying glass and you concentrate the sun's rays to a point, you can burn a hole through your arm, through a piece of wood, start a fire, because you're focusing the energy to one little point. And one of the problems I see with newer investors is they're bouncing and bouncing and bouncing and bouncing from different structures. And I loved what you said, pick one.
Yeah, and even if it's the wrong one, that's the thing, is the consequences of it being the wrong one aren't that bad. Like if you decided, I want to do a rental, and then you successfully build a rental property, and then you go, oh, I don't actually want this, then sell it and move on to the next thing. But pick one focus. This isn't, I agree with you that what I see a lot in people that are newer is they don't know what they're trying to accomplish. Are you trying to create income? Are you trying to create long-term income? What are you trying to do? Like talking about Dave Peters, the vision. What is your vision? What are you trying to accomplish by doing real estate? And for the majority of people, the answer should be, I want to create long-term wealth and freedom for my family. And it tends to be more rentals. And I think that the consequences of doing a rental versus, again, doing a new construction or doing a flip, I feel like it's a good dipping a toe into the water to learn if you actually like figuring this stuff out. So if you didn't like what you decided on the first time, but you were able to focus and ignore everything else, you can do that again. And now go do an Airbnb because that's the new shiny big thing. And people perceive with what we've done as we chase shiny objects as well. And I would say what we have done is made strategic decisions on different exit strategies, but it's all gone to accumulating long-term wealth, getting low financing that's long-term and fixed rate, and then figuring out how to hold as much real estate as we can for the long run. And there's different methods to go about it, but that's basically the core of what we've done the entire time. There may be these little, spidery legs coming out of the hub of the center, but that's basically what we've decided to do.
Yeah, one of the things that you got me thinking was when we were about the same age when we started. Well, you were a lot younger than when I started, but where you are now. When I went at this, I wanted to be done at 55, and I wanted the monthly cash flow. And I understood rental property through Kim's mom and dad had like 4 or 5 rentals. So, and I talked to enough people where that's what I wanted to go do. So my whole process was rental. And in your case, it was cash. I want $100,000 a year. So we all have different visions about what it is we're trying to accomplish, and that's just fine. There is no the way.
But you accumulated the same skills that I did. That's the thing, is there's a base level of skills that you have to have in this business, all we're talking about is literally at the very end, when you get a project done, what are you going to do with it? That's all we're talking about. I'm going to get an entire project done and I'm going to regular rent it. I'm going to get an entire project done. I'm going to Airbnb it. I'm going to get an entire project done and I'm going to sell it on the retail market. There's all this back stuff that had to happen beforehand. You had to find the money. You had to find the deal. You had to find the contractors. All those skills translate into all those different methods of dispossessing the properties. So it's that's why I say just singularly focus on one idea, so that you can, even if it's the wrong method of dispossession for you, you can still have just said, I'm good at ignoring all this chatter that's on the side. I'm good at focusing. I'm good at finding my area. I'm good at finding these types of properties, and I'm good at executing.
What character traits for you play the biggest role in your success?
My again, going back to the whole, like, I don't know what I don't know, it's my willingness to take risk, 100%. So my willingness to make my willingness to be decisive in spite of the unknown is 100% my best and worst character trait. It gets me in the most trouble, but it also creates success, because I'm the guy who's willing to say, we should do this, and sign the contract right now, and we're going to do this. And then, oh gosh, wait, hold on. Like, Jason is not as decisive. And that was one of the reasons that he partnered with me in the beginning, was he went and looked at a deal that I had gone and looked at. And he was like, I ran the numbers and you ran the numbers and you made the offer and I didn't, because I was scared. And it was really interesting, because I think what he recognized was, I need somebody who's a little bit of a dumbass, who's willing to just bull in the china shop and go in there and make a little bit of a mess.
Let's be clear here. It's not that you're a dumbass, is that you make a decision and go. That's where you and I are very similar.
Yeah.
Where I will see something, and there's been a number of times where I'm talking to someone on the front porch and they give me a number, but again, I know my area.
Right.
And we do the deal right there on the porch.
Yeah.
And off I go.
Yep.
And Kim's like, whoa, 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 hang on, whoa. I'm like, no. We're going to do this. We got to go. This is too good.
Yep. Yeah, and with experience, the decisions like that become easier to make. In the beginning, there does have to, like, that's the tough part. There is a balance of, like, oh, you don't have enough knowledge, or you don't have enough knowledge of an area. But going and talking to another investor and, like, creating some value for them not by taking them to coffee and buying them a $2 coffee, because that doesn't create value for me. Like, if you brought me a handyman right now, I would literally be like, I will mentor you one day a week for a year if you brought me a great handyman in Nashville. Just kidding. I wouldn't actually do that. But that would create an immense
But the thing is,
for me.
you're going to give back.
Yes. Then I would say, they could bring me an area and say, I've been thinking about, I want to do rentals. This is the area I'm looking in. And if it's in Nashville, I can look at it and in 5 minutes tell you whether or not it's going to make sense or not, and whether or not you're going to actually be able to get any deals here.
Well, one of the pieces of advice I've get, you've heard me, I give, and you've heard me give this a lot, I'd like to get your take on it, is I tell newer people, bring in the experienced investors, cut them into your deal. Don't take them for a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
Don't buy them lunch. Bring them into your deal.
Yeah.
Give them part of it. But what you get oftentimes is financing from them, but what you really get from them is their know-how, their experience. How many years have they done this? And you're bringing that into your deal without you actually having it.
Yeah.
And I've been a big believer of that.
Sure. And I think that as long as you structure everything all right, the dangerous part about, like, and we won't say partnerships, but it's kind of a partnership, is that's one of those areas where I've seen people get really super burned, and it goes back to the whole trustworthy and competent thing. But I think there's ways to verify that on the front end, like getting plugged into an education network like you guys, like Pete, like Dykes. That education vein has proven for us to be extremely lucrative, not because we necessarily even thought like we're going to partner with a bunch of people in this and do deals together, even though we have. A good education network that's based in ethics, and it's it's been incredibly valuable, and just showing up to as many of those events as we can possibly show up to actually gain knowledge, and then meet people that as you've gone to 6 or 7 events, you see the same people kind of showing up and say like, hey, Matt Rocket up in Minnesota wants to do a deal on a storage facility, and we just closed one of those, and like we've created this. I know we've just created this knowledge base and trust of those types of people. So you're right. I think you just have to find those people in the right environment, and you have to structure the deal so that you're not doing like an eternal partnership with somebody, that it's this one time. So just in case this doesn't work out, I can be done with you and not have to do it again.
This is now the 3rd time, maybe 4th, since I've interviewed you, that as you were answering a question, you led right into the next question.
I'm a genius.
You are. So who have been your most important teachers that you've gone to?
Well, I hate to say it, but you're one of them.
And I'm not fishing for compliments.
I
want the other teachers too.
I'm
So
going to explain why, though. The reason why with you is that you bring people together, and so you have plugged us into other networks that have created immense value for us. So that's the reason for you, and you're very accessible when you're teaching. It's very easy to go watch Bill Cook teach and to actually be able to understand it the first time. Pete Fortunato is another teacher but it wasn't like the first time I watched Pete, I was like, I don't understand any of the stuff he said. We have to come back. Because it wasn't, I don't understand, I'm never doing this again. It was, I don't understand. But it goes back to like the tile thing. I screwed up the tile. That doesn't mean I leave it that way. It means I have to redo it. I have to show up again, and I have to understand how to speak Pete. I have to figure that out. And so showing up to Pete Fortunato, and until I finally understood, and it took hearing some of the stories 5 or 6 times to understand this creative deal structuring. And then what I realized was he was rewiring the entire process for us. Like the entire way you think about structuring real estate deals for us has been completely changed because we show up to Pete. For me, I don't connect with Dykes as well, but I see the value of what Dykes brings. But because he's paperwork, like Jason has found immense value in Dykes. I fall asleep. Not because it's Dykes, but it's just because of the content.
Not your cup of tea.
Yeah, exactly. Sean McCloskey, like, even though I've only seen Sean twice, the way he engages a crowd and talking about vision to get started, I feel like is so important, and actually figuring out how to craft your personal vision and then craft your life and business life around that personal vision is so evident and obvious, but so ignored by so many people that was like revolutionary for me over the last couple of years. So I think Sean McCloskey has also been a really important one. I'm trying to think of any other, like, that's probably the biggest ones that I can think of offhand.
These days, what type of investing are you doing?
Less now than we've done in a long time, because we perceive that there will be more opportunity coming up. We're still taking some of our existing inventory that's gotten a little dilapidated and rehabbing and either re-renting or selling. We're still finding some new construction deals that we can go in and tear some houses down. We're working on a large rezone up north of town that'll end up being a couple hundred units if we can actually get it done. It's in an opportunity zone. So that's something that like could occupy the next 4 or 5 years of my time if we could get that done. And that'd be great, because the end goal, that would take care of the end goal. Like that would be everything.
You get done with that and you can be done.
Correct. Yeah.
The question is, are you?
Yeah, probably not, because it's fun, because I'm enjoying it. So for me, the first 10 years of learning how to do real estate was single family stuff. The next 10 years, and I know it's been a little longer than 10 years, but the next 10 years, so from 40 to 50 years old, I want to start doing more big boy projects. For me, the architectural design and being able to spend the money and create durable, lasting architecture is super important. So I want to start doing some more.
The art side of you.
That. Yeah.
The creative side of you.
Yeah. And the legacy side of me, the side that like has decided that I want to make an imprint on the world And 200 years from now, I want somebody to potentially look at a building that I created or that I had a hand in creating, and it brings somebody 200 years from now value. Like, I love that idea.
That's cool. If you were forced to start over, you have your knowledge, but all you have is your knowledge and your skill set. No money, no houses, no banking connections, just what you know. You could use one deal structuring tool. What would it be?
Can I just say options? Options as in the broadest term of doing options.
As long as you define it a little bit.
Well, okay. So options, I feel like give you. I'll be more specific. Maybe I won't go with options if I have to be specific. I like the idea of options because, again, I know enough about how to structure a lot of different types of options, but I feel like it's kind of cheating. So I'll just.
Why is it cheating? You can cut yourself in on, if you're able to go put them together and cut yourself into deals. That's exactly what an option does.
But option still feels like too broad based on the question that you were wanting to. Okay, maybe not. Okay, so options. I could lease option someone's home.
That's two tools.
Okay, all right. So I'm gonna have a harder time than drilling down. I feel like I need the list in front of me of. You're right, because a lease with an option is.
And I will tell you that Rumbley said master leasing, but you hate tenants. Bad idea for you.
Yeah, I mean, but the problem is, like, the things that I really like to do and the things that I would want to do require all those other tools to be in place. So, like, going out and doing, subject to deals. Doing a bunch of subject to deals would be a fantastic way to get started. So I guess I'll pull options back and I'll say going out and doing a bunch of subject to deals, which I actually feel like are going to be hyper important as the market continues to turn. I feel like 2 years from now, there are going to be people who are willing to sell their houses with these fantastic financing rates in place, and taking houses down subject to the existing mortgage is going to be so incredibly valuable and lucrative. So I think that's probably how. Okay, I'll if I can't lease with an option, then I would probably do subject to.
Okay, and we saw the same thing happen when people were getting 8 and 9% loans back in the 70s, and then we hit 81, 82, 83. Interest rates are 18 or 19%, and this is before you had the dual and sale clauses.
Yeah.
And so that took off like a wildfire. People were selling their houses, leaving the mortgages in place, subject to deals. Yep. And that's when they came along and said, we're going to put in this clause of.
Yep. We decided we didn't lend that money to.
Yeah, they were still getting paid, but they didn't like that whole thing. They wanted those loans paid off, and so they could loan at the higher rate.
Exactly. Now I think that there are still workarounds for all that. There are workarounds for all that. So I think that's going to be a super valuable tool going forward.
What is your schedule look like every week? I know you don't have a schedule, but roughly.
Sure. So I wake up at 7 every morning just naturally. I don't have an alarm set, and I open my phone and I read Twitter for 30 minutes, and I'm not exaggerating. I lay there and I read Twitter for 30 minutes. I'm reading economic news. I should do other things, but I don't. I'm just being dead honest with what I do. I then get up. I kiss my wife. I let Poncho, our smallest dog, out. The other 2 dogs stay in the house. I go downstairs. I make an entire pot of coffee, and I turn on YouTube, and I watch 30 minutes worth of YouTube videos, which are the version of basically the Twitter stuff that I've been reading. I'm learning about the economy. I'm not watching just trash stuff. I'm learning. It's kind of like my reading the newspaper while I'm staying there drinking coffee. Then, depending on the day, I'll either head out and go check houses, or what I've been doing lately, which is driving down to our new barn. For the last 2 months, I've been down there almost every single day during the week. And I'll be in touch with my team for various meetings that are through Zoom or that are via phone call. Most of it's online based, but basically my team is taking care of the vast majority of stuff in the field so that I can be down there at our new barn managing all those subs, making sure that they don't get paint on the concrete floors that we don't want, painted, and that they don't paint the oak beams that we've got installed, that, those types of things. So that's what the last couple months has been like. I haven't worked over 30 hours in 1 week in 5 years.
What a difference. Tell me about your very favorite deal. How you found it, structured it, funded it, exited it.
So my favorite deal is a house 134 Spyglass. Spyglass was what I perceived was just going to be so easy, absolute slam dunk, beautiful 3,300 square foot brick house that the builder had walked away from, and they'd got it basically all completely dried in. All the structures were there. They'd gotten through all the mechanicals. They'd gotten drywall in, and I was like, "This is going to be so easy. We just have to go in and finish everything out." It's this big grand house on a golf course, up on a hill, and what I didn't realize was how much money it was going to take to get a driveway up to the house with all the retaining walls that needed to be in place. And I didn't realize that the builder before had not gotten some of the inspections that he needed to. So we ended up having to tear out some drywall to show certain things. And then building the front steps that went up, there was no footer inspection for those. So a lot of that stuff had to be torn out. And we created a beautiful, gorgeous, fantastic looking house, and at the very end realized if we went to put it on the market, we were going to make no money, zero money, maybe even lose money. And so we said, crap, what are all our alternatives? And we said, what if we just like kept the financing in place that we have now and we sold it, but we got some deposit money down from the people, and this is before we knew how to do creative deal structuring at all. And what it did was rev this engine of learning how to basically get ourselves out of trouble. And what we ended up doing with that house was getting 25 grand down from somebody to sell it to them. They ended up not being able to close because they got a job transfer, a year later. So we ended up with the house back. They basically just like, I wish I could get my money back, but they're paying me, my job is paying me to get out of this deal. And then we ended up retailing it and making just a little bit of money, but we learned so much. And it was this crazy squeeze mentally and physically for like 2 years to finally get through to the other side and have accumulated all these tools. And it was kind of the pinnacle for me of any deal that we've done, where we've been forced to accumulate a vast amount of strategic tools as we've been doing the job, both on a rehab and then on the creative financing side, to save our own butts, basically.
Great story.
Yeah.
How did you go from the person who did that first deal, FMLS, where it's just shaving a haircut? How did you go from that person to being able to do the deal you just described?
Slowly. Well, I mean, maybe that's not the best example. I mean, we do take down larger deals. So we do, we've done some 4 and 8 home developments. We've done, road extensions, sewer main extensions, stuff like that. So we've done some like much larger deals that my perception when I started out was I would never do those deals because it's too big, it's too much of an accumulation of knowledge. Every time we have made a change, we've done it on a deal where we were like, we got a smoking deal on this thing. We should take this risk because there's enough upside on the back end that if we miss, we're still going to be safe. And every strategic point in time where you can view, when our first new construction house, we bought a rehab that when we did the math, we were like, I think we can tear this down and do new construction instead, because we bought the house for 25 grand and houses in that area were retailing in the 250, 300 range. And so we made that strategic move to do this. The first time we did a more of a multifamily thing, it was the exact same thing. And we made $150,000, $200,000 worth of mistakes on that 8 build, and we still made great money on it, because every time we've made a move, it's been on one specific deal where we felt like we have the room to make the mistakes. We didn't force that deal. We didn't force that strategy on something that we didn't have the room. So like, yeah, that's every single time we've made those changes, we've been both safe and then willing to look around and perceive these are other options, these are other tools that we can use, and then execute and do it.
Are you proud of yourself for how far you've come?
Yes. Yeah.
When you look back, what's the journey? When you're looking back at the beginning, if you could go back and talk to yourself when you're that first investor, doing that first deal.
I would not tell myself about any of the success that I would have. I would tell myself that you can figure all of this out. No matter what circumstance you get into, you can figure it out. That's what I would tell myself. I would not hint at any of the success.
What's the single most important piece of advice you can give to an investor who's starting out?
Figure out your personal vision and your personal lifestyle that you want, and craft your business around that lifestyle. Make decisions, and you'll have to sacrifice in the short run. Like there will always be things that you have to do that don't fit in your personal vision, but if you craft the personal vision first, you will then craft a business that matches that vision.
Looking forward, what are your real estate investing goals? You kind of touched on the big project. Is that it?
It's leave stuff in place for generations. That's my real estate investing goals going forward. It's create legacy through architecture.
As a real estate investor, what have been the biggest obstacles you faced?
I think it's that pacing thing that I was talking about. It's the difference between you either feel like you have too many deals and not enough money, or too much money and not enough deals. And I think that overall, that to me seemed to be the biggest monster, kind of all the way around, was that there was always something missing, and you always felt like you were having to run somewhere to take care of that thing, and then that thing would change. So to me, it was just this perpetual feeling of I'm not on top of it.
I've always called them fires.
Yeah.
There's always fires.
Yeah.
And no matter what you're doing, there's fires. And Kim has a hard time with that with me.
Yeah.
Because she's like, well, you need to go do this. I'm like, I got that. However, there's this fire over here that demands full attention right now, all hands on deck. I can't go do this. But you need, I get that, but I got a fire.
But it seems like the fires for us have always been at least a half a step ahead. Like if this path that we're working towards success is this way, the fires seem to kind of still be ahead of you. So you're putting out the fires, but it's still bringing you a little bit further forward in the journey. And there are times when there's a hard detour, but it's rare that you can't get back to that path towards success, and that those fires, when you look back, there's a bunch of scorched earth behind you, but it's because you've made those good decisions of putting out those fires.
But said another way, so there's scorched earth behind you, but then it grows really green grass.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Dave Ramsey said, I'm not standing on a mountain of success. I'm standing on a mountain of mistakes. I'm standing on a mountain of every mistake that I have made, and still the decision of I'm going to take a step up and step on top of that mistake and learn from it, and then take another step up. And Ray Dalio says the same stuff. He says the most important part, he kind of does it as a curly Q that kind of goes upwards. He said, I'm forced to learn. I'm forced to learn because I see that the thing starts this downward trajectory that will continue unless I'm able to hook it and then vault myself up again.
Great word picture. To achieve the success you've achieved, was sacrifice required?
Yes. Yeah. The sacrifice that was required was not buying a Lamborghini the first year I could have bought a Lamborghini. I mean, it sounds ridiculous, but the sacrifice has genuinely been, it's been build the vending machine and fill it with the Cokes. Like that's been the biggest sacrifice for me, because what I want to do is I want all the toys. I want to take all the houses that we've accumulated, sell them all, and buy cool stuff. And so it sounds ridiculous, but truly I have lived an absolutely...
I've seen your hunting videos where you take out hunting jackets, and there's like 27 hunting jackets that you've tested and they come out, and the couch is full of hunting jackets. I'm like, how do you have 27 hunting jackets?
I'm not saying that I don't partake in the good things of life now. It's not like I'm living on beans and rice. I truly have lived a super blessed life so far. The amount of, like, when people are like, I had to sacrifice, I haven't had to sacrifice at the level that some people have had to sacrifice to get where they got. I got a leg up because my parents were loving and caring. I got a leg up because they made me go to high school and graduate. They made me go to college. I got a leg up because my dad has enough money to lend to me on occasion when we want to do a deal. I got enough because my parents didn't steal my social security number and jack my credit up right when I started out. Like I have had a lot of fortune in my life that I have not had to overcome a lot of the things that people have had to overcome. And yet, if you have, you still have to overcome those things. I'm sorry that they happened to you. I'm sorry. But it's not your fault, but it's your responsibility. Like, you are the one who has to solve those problems. You didn't make them, I get that. But you still have to solve those problems and go forward. So yeah, the biggest thing for me is the biggest sacrifice that I have had to make is not a big sacrifice. And I recognize that.
And that leads to it. Have the sacrifices been worth it?
Yes. Of course they have. Yep, the sacrifices have been worth it because in the end, the accumulation and keeping everything has made so much more money than all the selling of deals. I wish we had every house that we'd ever built or flipped back. It would be worth 6 times what we are now. Not way more than that, actually.
Okay, most important question I'm going to ask you. When you came face to face with the brick wall, that happens to all of us a number of times, why didn't you quit? You hit the wall. Why didn't you quit?
I did for a minute. You hit the brick wall, and it's okay to accept that you hit something that you perceive as insurmountable, or you can't go over it, you can't go under it, you can't go around it, and it's okay to sit there for a minute and to say, this may be the end. Like, this may be a spot that I can't get out of. This may be a deal that we don't have a choice, we're going to lose money on. And then once you've accepted that may be the case, you stand up and you continue anyway. Like, it all goes back to the whole stopping right now is not acceptable. Like, you can't quit halfway through a deal. Get done with the deal, get it sold or get it rented, and then you can make a better assessment. But not making a decision out of some external force that is negative in your life, I think. And that you can't exactly, I guess I don't know that that's necessarily the best advice, because there are sometimes negative things that come up that you just don't, that maybe you don't have a choice, and maybe I just haven't run into those things yet. I would say that I haven't ever hit any of those walls that are so insurmountable that I haven't just done the thing that I always do, where I just go, oh, we're just gonna go through, or we're gonna go over, or we're gonna go around, or we're gonna go under, like one of those decisions.
So let's take it a little bit of a different step.
Okay.
So you're talking to someone out there, and they're at the wall, they're hitting the wall, money, time. My wife's been living on Walmart toilet paper for 10 years. She's pissed. You know, all our money goes back into the houses. Every weekend, houses. We've been doing this for 10 years. I just want to quit. I just don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah.
They're within a year or 2 or 3 of crossing the line and becoming financially free. They're almost there. So when those people, someone watching this right now is hitting that wall, what would you tell them?
I would say that there is clearly there's an unbalance between your personal vision and your business vision. And I do see that a fair amount with people, especially real estate investors, where it's the whole you can't eat equity. So a lot of husbands force their wives to live these really impoverished lives, and they have very high net worths, but they don't have a lot of cash flow. And so I would say I would want to look at their exact position that they're in, but make some decisions. And if you're 3 years from finishing, from getting financially free, but you're extremely uncomfortable, what would it take to get comfortable right now in the next few months for you to then extend it from 3 to 5 years? Like, is it a refinance that you loosen up a little cash, that you put that in the bank, and all of a sudden it's like, oh good, we can do this? Or is it selling a house where you just go, oh, and and it can literally be happy wife, happy life, where it doesn't make logical sense, it doesn't make financial sense, like just like you've talked about Kim wanting a paid for house. That doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. What makes sense, because it's the cheapest debt you can borrow, is go leverage the crap out of your personal home and go use that money to do a bunch of wrap lending and make a bunch of money. But I would say, going back to the original question is, there's a division between your life vision and your business vision, and you need to listen to your life vision a little bit more, and then wrap that business vision around it, and allow some more time. Allow yourself some more time. This isn't a race. Like, we're not in a super fast sprint. Like, just get a little more comfortable in the short run. I guess that's what I would say.
Now we're going to go to the 50,000 foot view.
Okay.
Okay. So this isn't just real estate. This is big view. What's the single most important lesson you've ever learned?
The American dream is real, and freedom is real, and it requires work, and it requires sacrifice, and it requires effort, but it is achievable, and I believe that everyone can achieve it. That's what I mean.
Good. Back to real estate. What'd you do right?
Kept a bunch of houses when I wanted to sell them.
What'd you do wrong?
Sold a bunch of houses when I should have kept them.
And what didn't you do that you wished you would have done?
I wish that we would have played into, like, I wish that we would have bet on our, I'm trying to think of the way to phrase this. We perceived that Nashville was going to grow and explode, and I wish we would have taken riskier bets, believing in ourselves that we could perceive the future of the market a little bit better. I wish we would have leaned into that a little bit more, because I think that we could have gone further. I think that we could have done bigger deals, cooler deals, more interesting deals. Like, I watched people that, not the people who flamed out, but the people that just leaned further forward than we did, go significantly further than we did, because they trusted their gut. So I wish that I would have done that and trusted my gut going into the up market, like I'm trusting it going into the down market that I perceive.
What turns you on? Again, this is back to the 50,000 foot view.
So my wife on occasion will come into the room wearing really skimpy. Oh, right, this is not. She'd be horrified. I think the thing that I'm excited about right now, thinking economically, is I perceive that we've been squeezing blood out of a rock for the last probably 4 or 5 years on our end, and I'm excited to see some stuff loosen up in the market. But that also terrifies me, because that means people are getting hurt. So I'm excited to get in and to try to help people and figure out the best ways to solve people's problems. But I also know that means that there's a lot of people with a lot of problems, and I don't like that. And at the same time, I do like it.
That's one thing that concerns me, is there's so few people that have so little money in the bank. They're living paycheck to paycheck, and and it goes back to, 95% of Americans retire at 65, and they can't retire at their current income level.
Yep.
And they've had 45 years to get ready, and they just never did.
Yeah.
And then they're living on family, or is what you said with the grandmother, where the kids are having to fund them.
Yep.
And they had 45 years to get ready for this, and they just never did.
They just never did. And my grandparents were the perfect example of that. They thought they were going to be okay. And truthfully, what killed them over time was the just steady inflation, the steady march of inflation. Because when they were looking at their pension amounts, when they signed up for the jobs that they signed up for, they thought this is going to be plenty for us. And they didn't recognize that the last 10 years of life, where they were in an elder care facility that was $6,000 a month, it's unsustainable.
Yeah.
It's unsustainable when you live that long. Like Pete says, it's inconvenient to be physically alive and financially dead. They would have had to. We are being forced through economic policy to take more risks with our money than we have ever had to before, in my opinion. Like, I think that that's one of the reasons that on the YouTube channel that I run, I've started talking about real estate more. And I'm like, guys, you don't have a choice. If you're a plumber, if you're a blue collar person, you do not have a choice. You have to figure out how to use leverage, and you have to figure out how to buy houses. You will not make it if you're just trying to invest in the stock market, or you're just trying to save, or you will not make it unless you started when you were 20 and you disciplined and literally put 30% of your income every month until you are an old person in there. You will not make it.
What turns you off?
The Fed.
What's your favorite sound?
This isn't so bad right here.
I can hear, the mics might not be picking it up, but I can almost hear the horse's tail swishing.
That's what
and
I
I hear
was gonna say.
birds. And this is what it was like at our horse ranch, which was very quiet.
Yeah.
And you couldn't hear the traffic, and you didn't hear sirens, and you didn't hear planes, and you didn't hear anything. It was just quiet, and I
we're
miss that.
lucky because we're 10 minutes north of downtown Nashville, but because we live in this bowl where we are right now, it shields so much of the sound. So I love the sound of a horse eating, actually. I know it sounds so bizarre, giving a horse a carrot and hearing that deep resonance. Actually, you know what? Probably an elk bugle is actually my favorite sound. There's nothing like elk hunting and hearing an elk bugle 100 yards away. It will...
The most frightening elk bugle I ever heard was at 11:30 at night in my motorhome when I was asleep.
Yep.
And it wasn't an actual elk, but our friend Derek had
Yep, he brought his bugle too.
Yeah, and my wife actually, quote unquote, accidentally left the door open, unlocked. Evidently, they had having a conversation, and all I hear, and I'm sound ass asleep.
Did he go into the motorhome and blow it?
No, he just stuck it in the door. That was enough.
It's plenty. Those things are so loud.
That was more than enough.
It's a similar feeling when you're hunting and you got an arrow knocked because you hear crashing around, and all of a sudden one rips a bugle, and you can tell he's old and gnarly, and yeah.
What sound do you like least?
Babies crying on an airplane. Hands down.
You've had a wonderful life. You're at the pearly gates.
Mm-hmm.
What do you want to hear God tell you?
You bent the branches of many people's family trees in good directions.
Okay, so this is on YouTube. It's out there. Do you want to give out your contact information? Your website, your YouTube?
No, I mean, you could go watch, if you just Google Brandon Mcdonald Archery, if you're interested in that kind of thing, you could watch that. I think I'm going to get into some real estate education stuff, so...
Good.
Yeah.
You should.
I think I'm going to. I've started making videos on it already, kind of doing some house walkthroughs, and I should show you one.
Do you have a YouTube channel that people can go watch this?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know that they'll be able to watch this, but I haven't created it yet, but just search Brandon Mcdonald on YouTube, and you'll see stuff that's come up with me. I've got tons of content out pertaining to archery, but as I start dropping real estate videos, they should be able to find
I really hope you do teach.
Because
with what you know, I understood that we have an obligation to pass on the things that we've learned. That's very, very important. You have to pass on what you learned. You can't hold on to it.
Throw down the rope. I like that. I like that idea. Even if I'm not that far ahead, I'm further ahead than some people.
You're way far ahead than almost everybody who started off. You're light years ahead.
So surely
it goes back to when you were that young man. What would you say?
Right.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Bill.
Appreciate it. We're both sweating a lot.
I know. I'm sorry. I thought we were going to be good today.
No. I thought, hey, let's do this on the front porch of your house because the sun's going to go behind us. But no. We'll come down here where the sun sets on us.
This is pretty gnarly.